Greetings, netizens of YouTube. It will have come to your attention that one Donald John Trump has been inaugurated and is now the President of the United States. Now, it didn't come as a surprise to me that he was elected, although while watching the inauguration, I thought back to when his candidacy was first announced and dismissed it as a joke. As the weeks passed, it seemed clear to me that his opposing nominees within the Republican Party were too weak to be able to compete with him. At that stage, I knew he could be elected president. You see, what many people fail to understand is that Trump this time was the hope candidate. He promised change, which is historically a very powerful weapon, which galvanizes and energizes voters. As we know, it was how Obama was elected. Clinton promised continuity, not understanding that people remain unhappy and unfulfilled by the current international system. I would go further and say that people are unhappy with the values that underpin this capitalist system and its soulless quest for material possessions, rather than upon personal happiness. But that's another story. To not beat the proverbial dead horse, I do believe that had Sanders faced Trump, it would have taken one of the latter's best cards away from him. And yes, I think that Bernie would have beaten Trump, but it would have been close. A wounded and bloody Bernie would have survived the Red Menace accusations of coming to take our freedoms away. That aside, I wasn't shocked or surprised when Trump beat Clinton. I had long prepared myself for that probability. Notwithstanding some of Trump's god-awful appointments, including a bevy of billionaires, Breitbart's Bannon, and the odd religious zealot for good measure. I was also one of those that believed that the office of the presidency would moderate Trump. I believed that the balefuls of bullshit from the campaign trail would be left behind once he assumed office. I'm not going to mince my words. The Trump administration's conduct since taking office has shocked and dismayed me. The inaugural speech, which has historically been an opportunity to bring the country together, was used by Trump to assure his own supporters that he would drain the swamp, as he had claimed, during the campaign trail. But it was the Trump team's extraordinary reaction to the media reporting that less people had attended his inauguration than Obama's, which had me seriously concerned. Look, it's no secret that parts of the media had cast aside any pretenses of impartiality and were against Trump during the campaign. But the fact is that without media coverage of Trump, particularly during the Republican nominations, that Trump would never have got anywhere near the presidency today. To be clear, the media helped Trump get elected by providing him the oxygen of publicity that other candidates didn't receive. They hung upon his every jibe against his opponents, which were then re-reported and stuck in the public mindset. Whatever the current score, or the legitimacy of Trump's grievances against networks like CNN, when a new administration arrives in office, the smart thing to do is to start with a clean slate. Mainstream news networks have a tendency to toe the line when they see a new president elected. Company executives and journalists need access to the administration. When the networks start competing with one another to be favorites of the new administration, investigative reporting and skepticism of power is frequently cast aside, particularly if network executives have built closer relationships with the administration. So, when on the first day in office Trump turns up at CIA headquarters to attack the media, it seems foolhardy in the extreme. However, this could be another Trumpism, speaking off the cuff.
That, as you know, I have a running war with the media. They are among the most dishonest human beings on earth. But
it was only later that the seriousness of the problem sank in, as the newly installed White House press secretary, Sean Spicer, launched a bitter attack on the media for its reporting about the size of the crowd, openly told falsehoods, and then refused to answer questions.
That's what you guys should be writing and covering. That this, instead of sowing division about tweets and false narratives, the president is committed to unifying our country, and that was the focus of his inaugural address. This kind of dishonesty in the media, the challenging that bringing about our nation together, is making it more difficult.
Make no mistake, people, this is a strategy. It is a badly planned strategy by Steve Bannon, who believes that the mainstream media that calls people to elect Trump can be openly intimidated or bullied into supporting his administration, or face marginalization as Trump can take his message directly to the people through announcements and tweets, and they will believe it.
There's been a lot of talk in the media about the responsibility to hold Donald Trump accountable. And I'm here to tell you that it goes two ways. We're going to hold the press accountable as well,
according to Bannon. But that's not all. I'm also concerned about foreign policy. You might remember that what we in the UK would have called Project Fear was used during the campaign. The message was that if Clinton became president, that there could be World War III with Russia.
Look, with her, you'll end up in World War III. Steve, you're going to end up in World War III over Syria if we listen to Hillary Clinton. She's incompetent.
Of course it was absurd, but many people swallowed it. The greatest danger in international relations is when powers don't understand each other's boundaries. It is unpredictability or mistaken assumptions that can cause wars between nations. Kuwait and the Falklands conflict were examples of this failure when the US and the United Kingdom failed to communicate to Iraq and Argentina respectively that they would not tolerate invasion. The result in both instances was war, as both Iraq and Argentina miscalculated due to Western policymakers' incompetence. When US Ambassador to Iraq Glaspie met with Saddam Hussein just days before he invaded Kuwait, Saddam asked Glaspie what she thought of Iraq's territorial claims on Kuwait. Glaspie replied, "We have no opinion on your Arab-Arab conflicts, such as your dispute with Kuwait. Secretary of State James Baker has directed me to emphasize the instruction first given to Iraq in the 1960s that the Kuwait issue is not associated with America." Saddam smiles. And in the case of the Falklands before the conflict, London had already agreed with Argentina on a plan for negotiated settlement to persuade the islanders to accept Argentinian status. A lack of progress through diplomatic talks, in particular the failure of the leaseback option, fused with further serious political miscalculation, the 1981 British Nationalisation Bill, where the Falkland Islanders suddenly lost their cherished right to full British citizenship, provided a clear signal that the British were disengaging from the Falklands and were the trigger for the other track of Argentinian strategy, the decision to use force. Argentina's original intention was to mount a quick, symbolic occupation, followed rapidly by a withdrawal, leaving only a small garrison to support the new military governor. This strategy was based on the Argentinian assumption that the British would never respond militarily. Fast forward to today. We have an unpredictable President Trump who says he wants better relations with Russia and less military adventures abroad. Then we have neocon Republican leaders in Congress who are highly suspicious and in some cases outwardly hostile towards Russia. There are also military officials at the Pentagon and those in the intelligence communities who by design are hostile to Russia. Now set that against the backdrop of a media that is largely against Trump and street protests against the Trump administration. So then, what is the election of Trump to Russia? An opportunity to assert itself. It would be exactly the same realpolitik if a Russia president came in with plenty of internal opposition and disagreement. Advisors would tell the US president to take advantage of this weakness by asserting itself abroad. Could we expect anything less from President Putin? This is where there is a huge danger for miscalculation and conflict of the type that I was referring to with Iraq and the Falklands. Internal division and incompetence are far more a threat to global peace than are rather silly characterizations of global leaders being good or evil. It's easy to imagine that Russia may take the opportunity to overstep its boundaries and that the US will give mixed signals on how it will respond. Yes, I am now more worried about the future direction of the USA than I have ever been. We are in uncharted waters, where the Trump team not only seem to want to tear up the rule book, they don't seem to understand the way politics in a pluralist democracy works. One last sense that I've had over the past 48 hours, for what it's worth. If it continues like this, I can't see the Trump presidency lasting a full 4 years. I can't explain this sense on a logical level. It's one of those instinctive things. Whether this means he would resign in office, die, or be impeached, I don't know. It's such a surreal feeling watching this administration's conduct. I can't imagine which and how many controversies there will be and what will happen as a result.